Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists. All right, rev up those engines, everyone. It's Cannonball Run week here on the podcast.
Oh my God, this is the week. We're going all the way from Portland, Oregon to St. Louis, Missouri, the great state of misery. I cannot believe folks are doing this.
I can't either. That is one tough mutter right there, trying to get through that one.
It's a gnarly drive. It is not the easiest one, and it's not like the country is necessarily changing like that Bugs Bunny cartoon. It's like you're going from the west to the plains to the whatever. It's a lot of plains.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I feel like the drive from Portland, Oregon to St. Louis, Missouri is like, you're just going to drive through a lot of methy little towns. It's a tough go.
Wait, what did you say? Methy?
Methy. Yeah, it's an adjective. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you stopped in Wyoming, Douglas? Yeah, there's a reason that people like meth. It's right out there in the western states, from Nevada all the way through Wyoming and Kansas, and however you want to do it. If you do that southerly route, like my dumbass did one year.
Sure.
Man, I did Sausalito. So not, coming from Portland, you pretty much have to take the northerly route. But from Sausalito, 2 or 3 hours out of the way, and I thought it'd be kind of cool to pick up 66. And so I drove down through there. I saw Merle Haggard Highway in Bakersfield. I thought it was going to be an easy go. Yeah. And then I hit 66. There's a reason people don't drive on it anymore. I mean, you got a couple of cool motel signs, but it's right next to the main highway. So it just kept dumping you back off of 66, and I'd wind back in. I'm like, no, I want to drive 66. And I got a cool couple of photos taken, but that was about it. By the time I got to Oklahoma, I was wrecked. I was like, I can't believe I've added 3 hours to my trip. It was not worth it.
Yeah. Just to say that you experienced that stretch of the road and mark that on the old bucket list.
Mm-hmm. And now I live on it.
Yeah.
I take Route 66 to take my kid to school. So.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy.
Yeah. So.
Weird how that happens. We did one of those bucket list stops. We made a trip out to New York this week, last week actually, and we swung up to Niagara Falls. We were on our way by there.
Nice. And took a little romantic Sigworth getaway.
Yep, a whole 2-hour stop at Niagara Falls.
Is the romance dead, Douglas? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's not dead, but the schedule was tight, and we wanted to be in Corning by the next day. So the next day, we spent the day at the Corning Glass Museum, which was actually a bigger attraction for us than Niagara Falls.
Cool. Get a little inspiration.
Oh, yeah. So this museum, it chronicles the history of glass throughout all time. Okay. But what is most interesting to me personally is the last 40 years of the studio glass movement in the United States, seeing some of the idols who I have been following since I started glass blowing. So that was neat. And then the other thing that was super cool was they had a section on industry and about how plate glass windows used to be made and how the glass blower would spin a big bubble out to make like a 3-foot rondelle. And that's actually what my ancestors did when they came to the United States. So I got a selfie in front of that as if me and Ludwig were arm in arm.
Very cool. Yeah, that's amazing. Did you ever think about naming Oliver Ludwig instead?
Oh, yes. No, that was not his name. But if we were going to have another child, Ludwig was on the docket. Yes.
Nice. That's I've got a buddy who named their son Ludwig.
Okay.
And turned out exactly the way you think a Ludwig would. So maybe you dodged a bullet there. It sounds like it was inspirational and definitely worth the trip, huh?
It was. We couldn't stay for long, though, because we had to get our asses out to Manhattan. We were dropping off the next day a sculpture piece to a collector who bought it earlier this year. And we worked on some of the final details for an installation she's thinking about.
Oh, very nice. That sounds exciting.
Yeah, it sort of turned into a real nice trip. And we delivered the piece to her apartment in downtown Manhattan, which was quite an interesting experience. I mean, we're road warriors. We're used to driving around the country in our art fair vans, but try parking in downtown New York. That's pretty much a freaking nightmare.
A lot of these, by the time we get to our destination, it doesn't matter what the city is. Typically, we're landing, and there's a parking lot that's already been reserved. So it's almost like baby's arms, like, okay, we've got you. Come on, come in.
Maybe
here.
A yard sign that says "This way, please," or whatever. Nope. No parking to be found. But we navigated that crazy puzzle, and then we headed over to New Jersey, which is the location of one of her businesses that is being built. They gutted an old Dunkin' Donuts, and this high-end store is going to go in New Jersey. So the Sigworth Glass is possibly going to end up in an old Dunkin' Donuts.
Moving on up. Way to go. Yeah, right. Very good. Well, congrats. Sounds like it was a productive trip all the way around.
It was good. But I have to say, at the end of all of that, this whole physical component has been a struggle, and we just ended up having to scrap the whole rest of the year. I can't do any more shows. No.
Okay. Are you going to try to bump your surgery up, or
Well, it's kind of like I am unable to produce now at the kind of rate I used to be able to. So these last few commissions that we had on the docket that we're trying to work on, that's probably all I can actually physically accomplish.
Okay.
And so showing up to the shows, for one, I couldn't set it up anymore. So I really want to send out a thank you to Sarah and Kendra. They were really understanding of me canceling here last minute. So,
it's kind of moving sometimes to realize what a big community that we are a part of. And I think that people are generally pretty good to us out there. So it's nice to see that people are taking care of you and understanding. You're not a complainer. No. You're out there working your butt off. So,
well, the boss of this operation, Renee, she said to me this week when, I'm just trying to make a piece. That's all we're doing. I'm trying to be a partner. I'm trying to hold up my end. And I look like, like Full Metal Jacket when the bomb goes off and everybody gets up and they're trying to walk through it, That's what I look like walking just through the studio. The reality set in. It's like, if you can't walk 10 feet, how are we going to set up our next booth? So is honestly what it comes down to, and somebody explained it to me recently really well. They said it's kind of an issue of SHOMO. And I think a lot of us feel this way when we get into a show or have a certain schedule. Yes, part of it is the loss of income. Part of it is that fear of missing out the opportunity or whatever opportunity could come, but also just missing out being part of that event.
My favorite quote was not actually on the podcast, but it was from a good friend of the show. Helen Gottlieb said, she said, FOMO, it's more like JOMO. It's the joy of missing out. I don't want to do this shit. If I can avoid it, I will. So maybe you dodged a bullet. It's going to watch it. It's just going to storm and rain.
I hope not.
And I'm actually going to bring my raincoat this time. My wife made fun of me. Do you know how many raincoats I've bought at shows? I mean,
the show,
just countless numbers of raincoats and pull down the road.
That's always the way.
Yeah, always the way. Shoes and shorts, which I never think, I don't wear shorts. I don't want anybody having to see these legs. And it's just I'll put the jeans on and then it'll be 97 degrees and I'm like,
you're like, oh,
I think I'm gonna go buy a pair of shorts. You're like, again, okay, love you, baby. I pull a move like that, and Susie's just like, my baby.
You've got drawers full of shorts that only have been worn on one art fair weekend.
Those are Fairhope, Alabama shorts, and those are the St. Louis shorts. Oh, some good old Virginia Highlands Atlanta shorts. So I'm actually working for my next show, actually doing production work, doing pieces that I want to create for the first time in what feels like months.
Oh, okay.
And not feeling guilty about it because I don't have this gigantic, heinous commission hanging over my head like I have all goddamn summer.
Did you get it finished?
Yeah, I finished. Well, I put it in the box and I shipped it off until they were like, this isn't, we don't like it.
So so you're ready to send it to them and you are on pins and needles till you know that they get it and love it and everything's good.
I don't know if it's pins and needles as much as it's Pepto and Maalox. It's more it's a different feeling. I I hate that feeling. It's like they talk about like a New York minute. It's like a whole generation I feel like can pass between sending commission out. Because I don't know about you guys, but a lot of my commission customers,
Yeah.
they want a big unveiling moment as opposed to photos and here's what it looks like. I always kind of pitch them the unveiling moment. The unveiling moment is a way that I use to lie to my customers.
Okay.
Because I'll tell them the piece is done.
Yeah.
And it's not done. And it's just a way to kickstart my own work and get myself back into the studio for long hours. It does provide a lot of anxiety, but at the same time,
some of this anxiety feels self-induced, Will.
Well, I mean, sure, but it's like I'll lie to my people and be like, your piece is done. Now, most of my customers really prefer an unveiling moment. Would you like to just be surprised and delighted when you open up the crate? Or do you want to see photos ahead of time? And if they say they want photos ahead of time, I'm like, great, I'll be in my studio tomorrow afternoon and I'll take some pictures of it.
And then you run out to the studio. You hightail.
Well, no, I mean, I'm working on it. It's not like it's not like it hasn't been started. It's to a certain point. Yeah. But sometimes the point is not that far along. And I'll just go, yeah, you want, and then they'll say, no, we just want to be wowed and amazed, which is 99% because of the way I pitch it.
Right.
And they'll say that, and I'm like, great, here are my lies. Do you want the unveiling? I just need some time for the varnish to cure. That's a big one. I mean, like the varnish, you know what? The summer, it's been so humid. So I can buy myself an extra couple of days.
You are really telling all your secrets right now.
Oh, I do not. Yeah, there's a reason I do not tell my clients to listen to the podcast. Because they're all like, "Hey, you said that to me." No, I mean, sometimes you have to buy yourself a couple of extra days, and those are some of my ways.
Well, I understand. I mean, the whole challenge is with commissions, and most people, I've heard people say you get a commission will double the cost that you charge for it because you're going to be spending that much more time on it. And we do a number of these installations over the years, and I've come to, when I'm quoting it, to really get real about all of the energy that goes into these things. It's not just about producing like 25 pieces or whatever's going to be part of this collection that you're doing. That's not the whole thing. There's design time. There's the multiple amount of pieces that don't work out as you're doing it. You know what I mean? You have to factor all that in. So, I mean, all of
that's really smart.
All of your starting overtime or your wiping the canvas has got to be part of the process, you know?
Yeah. There's definitely a period of like, well, how come the face on this guy is so much whiter and contrastier? It's like, well, I painted over it 25 times.
Yeah.
So I don't want to talk about this commission anymore because it's already given me nightmares. It's over. And I actually created a piece for myself and just for the booth this week. So
that's awesome. Is that the piece that you sent me a photo of today?
I did.
Pretty awesome, man. I'm excited about it. I think your intention behind it is spot on. I think it's going to be dynamite. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah, I've got two kind of distinct, to me, what feels like bodies of work. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this one, the intention behind this is to bridge the gap between this body and take me to the next. I don't know. My booth, to me, I like a full narrative in my booth. I like to be able to tell stories from A to B and this piece to the next piece. And
sure.
When I'm out there pitching my work, and it's part of my kind of sales technique, I guess, and never stop talking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So just keep them in there
until they run away or buy something.
I don't know. I guess my biggest sales technique is be open and likable and tell stories. People get in there and the right people. I'm not just running my yapper to anybody that walks by.
No, I mean, for me, right along the same lines, it's all about authenticity. It's about being ourselves. And sometimes just being ourselves is like, it maybe
it's all well and good unless you're a real asshole.
There you go. But when you are yourself and the work and who you are all matches up, it only makes the piece more desirable. So it's like, my dad told me once when I started this
business.
Pull
up a chair, folks. We got dad lessons.
You got my dad lesson coming up here. He told me early on, if I was constantly trying to like lower the price or set up a deal with somebody that I wasn't comfortable with or kind of go outside of the parameters of what felt like a good decision when it comes to selling a piece, he said, you are then setting up that relationship every single time they come back to your booth. So he said, always act in a way that you feel good and they feel good about it so that you can continue to have that kind of relationship over the years.
So are you telling the podcast audience that you don't deal?
I wouldn't say that, no. But I would say that I won't make a deal that makes me uncomfortable. Like, I won't do the fine, I'll sell it to you for that kind of thing. You know what I mean? That and I have a bad taste in my mouth about it. No, I won't do that.
I'll tell a story on my good friend, Chris Bruno. He was talking to somebody at Dogwood one time, and they really lowballed him. And he had a pretty high price tag on this piece, and he really wanted to sell it. And he was like, look, I could sell it to you for that price. But you come into my booth next year, and we can't be friends. We're not going to be friends. It's just, I'm not going to remember you. The piece is going to go away. I'm going to roll my eyes at you as you walk away. We're not friends. I mean, I get my money, but you don't have anything with it. And he's like, now, for this price, I'm your buddy. I'm your friend. He's like, I'm going to remember you next week. I'll say hi to your kids. I'll ask how things are going.
This is like, what you get.
It all depends on you. Do you want the buddy price? You want to be friends, or do you want a good deal and walk away and feel shitty about this art?
So how did that play out?
Everybody wants to be your buddy.
Yeah.
But if you know Chris Bruno real well, then you might pay. It might be a real bargain to take less and not be friends. That might be the
desirable choice.
Oh yeah, if you're like, man, I got a deal, and I don't have to be friends. Yeah, right. I love you, Chris.
So I thought it's kind of interesting how we've talked to some artists. Yeah, how some artists, are strictly, they do the work, they're the sole artist, but then there's other artists who hire people. They hire people to do things that aren't the creation of the art.
Yeah, the dum-dum work.
Yeah, the dum-dum work. And so I know that when I...
and anyone calls it the dum-dum work.
The dum-dum work. I just accepted it as that's...
These assistants, and we're like, yeah, you're going to go do the dum-dum work. Daddy's going to stay inside the studio and do the smart guy work. All right. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I just was thinking about the different ways that we craft our businesses out there. And I know when I started in on the whole glass blowing business and was going to the wholesale market, I honestly thought everybody who showed up at the wholesale market as glass blowers, they were like me and Renee. It was like husband, wife, or one person with an assistant, blowing in the pipe when you say blow. And that was how they ran it. But no, these are like these whole production studios filled with other employees who are working and stuff like that. So this line gets kind of fuzzy between being this independent artist versus an independent artist with like a fleet of employees working for him.
Yeah, there's a fine line, but I don't even know that it's that fine. It's like you talk to Carol Swayze, and she has a really hard line on it. Any work that somebody does for you should be disclosed. I'm not going to call myself a partnership because somebody builds my panels that I paint on.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, well, that's not a fine line. Nobody's building their own panels.
Right.
There probably are people that do that, and more power to them, stretch their own canvas.
But the artwork aspect of it.
I say that Ben Fry, our good buddy Ben Fry, head of the NAIA, is he builds his own panels. So I'll shut up right now. It's a dumbass for building his panels. Then he have work to make.
Right. I mean, but then you've got, where does the line get drawn? You've got somebody maybe driving your stuff cross country for a show, or you've got
like Dolan said. I mean, why not?
Why not? I mean, if it means that the person who created the work and is going to sell the work, the artist, can arrive fresh and be ready for business, that isn't impacting the creative aspect of the creation of the work.
It's only impacting it positively if you can afford it. I mean, I can't afford it. I can't afford to pay somebody to drive my stuff across the country yet, but that's the goal,
Yeah. Like when I went to the Rosen show and it was all of these production studios filled with glass blowers, that glass blower who is named on the whole body of work, they go to shows and their 5 employees are back in the shop making their work for them.
Only 5?
Or a million, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Chihuly model. It is. I mean, even that's an interesting topic, but I don't know that we could even do anything but scratch the surface of it. I mean, it's like Warhol didn't. I mean, none of us are Warhol, right. But he didn't pull his own prints, and maybe he did the first one, but a lot of times he didn't. He made the money and set the shop up. When's the last time your boy Chihuly blew one?
Not since his eye got poked out in the car accident. I mean, that was his last day of, but really? He has described himself as Michelangelo. I mean, the ego on that, for example, but
yeah, all right.
But I mean, is the being the artist fully just the creative aspect of it, and however it gets executed, it gets executed? I mean, what makes the artist? What makes the professional artist? What makes the independent artist? What makes us any of that?
Well, I what I think I love about this community is that we are all kind of counting on the fact that we're getting our hands dirty and making our own work.
Sure.
I mean, that's the understanding, right?
Yeah.
That's the understanding out there is that you and I are look at my hands.
Oh, yeah.
We're on Zoom. I've got ink in my pores that's not coming out in the next 6 weeks. It's just, but that's the understanding. We're all out there. We're cutting our own fingers and putting together our own artwork, making it all happen. I don't care whether you put your craft hut up in the morning or some other guy does. I mean, maybe we need to start as a community helping each other. Talk about segueing into a completely different topic that could take more than one podcast, but we're an aging community.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was a system set in place where you could just fly in and sit down and sell your own work, you probably would have taken advantage of it this next couple of weeks instead of canceling.
Right.
So,
yeah. But
anyway,
I mean, I think the thing that comes to me is what makes our business model at these shows and the work that we're making out there on the road so desirable, I feel, is, and why I am so connected to this podcast, is the story and the experience behind the work. The fact that we, like take Ray Alfonso, for example, who you talked to this week. He's like the definition of resilience. The man is like, I'm not going to give away his story, but he talks all about how he got to the United States from Cuba. And it's not an easy journey.
No, it's fascinating. And it makes what we do seem easy. So that's what I love about his talk.
And the whole time listening to it, and I would encourage the listeners to think about this, his whole story that he tells really does set the stage for him being this professional independent artist. I mean, it makes so much sense as to how he would have the faith and the trust and put in the, the hard knocks.
Yeah.
And it was a really great talk, Will. And
well, you know what? It's funny. You say it's a great talk. It's a really great listen.
It's a great
I don't mind the fact that it is a really great listen. And here, my goal about this show, and a little, drop the third wall and say whatever.
Sure.
I want to be able to talk to people that are in our industry and let them explain who they are and let the folks get to know them a little bit better.
Right.
And sometimes that takes more work than others. And sometimes you have to coax people out.
Sure.
And sometimes, like with this talk with Ray, you need to learn to shut up and just let him do his thing.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of shutting up this week. Not that you'd notice here in the preamble, but I did a lot of shutting up and it felt good. I haven't done an interview in a couple of weeks, and I appreciate you picking up the slack there on that end. It's been a crazy couple of months.
Yeah.
But talking to Ray, I love the guy, and I love his relationship with Patricia, and I love his work. And it's just, I don't know, I wanted a chance to kind of dig down deep and get the fragments of these stories that I've heard over the years.
Sure.
And get the fleshed out version of it.
Yeah.
And it didn't honestly take that much work to get it.
Right.
The man is, it was almost like turning on an audiobook and listening to his story. And let's turn him on. Let's just get right into the show, shall we?
We shall. Here is Ray Alfonso from Greenville, South Carolina.
Kinda.
From Greenville, South Carolina, and
exactly. He'll get to it. All right.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Well, I've been getting notices from shows this week that I need to jump on and pay for my booth, but I'm not at home at my desk. So I really enjoy that I'm able just to flip open my phone.
Flip open your phone? Do you have a flip phone, Doug? And does Zap work on your flip phone? Because that's impressive.
No, but I turn on my phone, I log into Zap, and I'm able to buy my booth right there on the spot, and I can make sure I get that double booth or that corner booth I'm looking for, and I don't get stuck somewhere I don't want to be.
Quit talking about double booths, because if those shits are sold out by the time I come to get to them, I'm going to be mad.
Well, I sure do appreciate that with Zap we're able to keep up on our business with the shows on the road using our mobile device.
You know, Douglas, we have a couple of call to entries this week, and one of them that came down the pike is one that I've been wanting to hit for a long time. This one's kind of exciting. Have you ever heard of the Garage Sale Art Fair?
I have heard of it because I absolutely adore Bonnie Blandford, and she is an art show artist and show director. Her and Michael Kiefer, they created this show. Artists who run art shows, that's the way it should be.
I mean, really seriously. Is. Absolutely. And it's not your typical art fair. It's like you're supposed to bring things you haven't sold and put them maybe, let's say, a more attractive price on them. It really is the garage sale art fair. It's stuff that you've had in your garage, and it's bring out your weird stuff.
And it might be the stuff that you're not making anymore. It might not fit in your current body of work. It's just a little more loose. It's stuff that you just want to get rid of. You want to move on. Yeah.
Mark them down, move them out, clean out the booth, give yourself a big old booth enema, and let yourself sell some of that work that's been hanging around.
All right. The application deadline is October 1st, so it's coming up real quick. So make sure you jump on that. And the show happens February 25th, and that's in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
I'm going to apply.
The other call to entry we have on the docket this week is from a show that you and I know really well, the Coconut Grove Arts Festival.
In my mind, it was always the kickoff for my art show season. So it's always a big major down there in Florida.
It is. It's one of those to fit into the tour of shows. And you know, there's a lot of new changes that have happened at the Grove since they came back from COVID.
I could not think more highly of the director. We've talked about Camille Marchese in the past. She used to be a major part of the Winter Park Arts Festival, which also has an amazing reputation. They're doing things like shrinking the number of booths down to a smaller number so that you're getting a bigger piece of the pie.
That's huge. That is just huge.
And they're also giving artists more room around their booths and really putting a lot of money into the show itself as far as getting the community out to come back to Coconut Grove.
They're putting out a budget of $300,000 on marketing. So they are getting the word out in South Florida that Coconut Grove is a premier event, again, focused on art.
I heard great things coming out of the show last year, and we're looking forward to more great things coming up.
Well, the deadline for this application is coming up really quick. It is September 15th, so don't wait. Hop on today.
Panic apply, folks.
Panic apply right now.
Jump on there. Have yourself a beverage or two and get on Zap after midnight like I do.
Ray Alfonso, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Thank you. Looking forward to our conversation.
I am too. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. I got up early this morning and was backing up a little Cuban history of myself so I could make sure that I was a little bit prepared.
Where do you get the history from, though? I mean, there's two histories.
Well, that's true. I mean, let's get down into it. I mean, you were born in where were you born? I don't want to answer for you.
In Matanzas, a city right next to Havana.
Mm-hmm.
They call it the city by the bay. So I was born really close to the ocean.
Right.
And I grew up there, and I came to America when I was 17.
I don't want to date you or anything, but at the same time, as far as the history goes, it's really interesting. When were you born?
I was born in 1974.
Okay.
And I was born with the revolution. And my mother actually was born the year of the revolution. So
Was
my
she
mother,
really?
yeah. So we were all raised by communist propaganda.
So your mother was born in, say, what, like 55?
No. My mother was born in 59.
59. Okay.
1959 was the year of the revolution.
Gotcha.
She had me really young.
Yeah, she did have you young. And you're born in a little coastal town there in Cuba, and it's a communist dictatorship. I mean, tell me a little bit about that, about growing up under that.
It was a good childhood till you realize that there's no future. When you see your uncles and your father and you're struggling when they're in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and some of my family were doctors and lawyers, and they struggled. They struggled to survive, really, and
Right.
and the only way you could get ahead in Cuba is if you're part of the Communist Party. I mean, like, you have to be part of the Communist Party, but if you climb up the ranks, you can do better. But
Right.
most of my family, actually none of my family, wanted to do that. Even my father he was in the revolution. My father was a military man, and he got dissolution within a year and a half of the revolution, because that's when Castro turned communist. So historically, Cubans have been hardworking and not communist, capitalist people. I mean, we like to work hard and get ahead, and this is why a lot of the Cubans come here. They come to Miami. They go all over the world. But
So how old were you when you came to America?
so I was 17, but I tried to leave Cuba probably 12 times, 13 times. My mother died when I was 12, and I went to live with my father out in the country. I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
And so I went to school.
Were they together when they?
No. My father left Matanzas, where I grew up, when I was probably 2 or 3. So he went back to the country, to the province where he was born and raised. And he left the military and became a farmer. So my father today is a farmer.
Yeah.
So
And he's still back in Cuba.
Yeah, he's still in Cuba.
Farming.
Yeah, he's in Cuba. But anyway, so I decided to leave the island, but there's no real way to leave. You can migrate out of Cuba because you're born with, I mean, you can't even get a passport. But anyway, So I started trying to leave when I was probably 13, 14 with older cousins, and we failed many times. We built boats and rafts and inner tubes. We tried everything. And I was put in jail a few times, but I was a minor, so they let me go. They treated me like a juvenile delinquent, not like a real criminal,
Right.
And also, they knew I wasn't going to be able to make it. But anyway,
so you're leaving. You're building these rafts. As far as like, where are you trying to get across? Are you trying to get to Key West, or are you trying to get all the way to Miami?
We're trying. Really, people. I didn't know then that Key West was much closer, so we always talk about Miami. But really, a high percentage of the rafters, people that leave Cuba, actually they don't make it because there's an embargo. So there's American ships out there all the time, kind of patrolling, making sure that merchant ships don't go in and out of Cuba. And if they do, they have to write down their ship number. That's how the embargo actually works.
Okay.
So if you enter a Cuban port, you cannot enter an American port for 180 days. So there's a physical embargo. There's naval ships out there.
Is it American ships trying to stop you from coming in, or are there also Cuban ships trying to keep you from leaving?
No. Well, the Coast Guard, the Cuban Coast Guard, kind of guards the coast. And we got picked up a few times before by the Cuban Coast Guard, and they just bring you to shore. They kind of like book you, and they usually let you go, except if you've done it too many times, and then they put you in jail for a few years. But the longest I was in jail was like a month, and they just let me go.
And this was as kind of a boy too, right?
Yeah. In Cuba, you grow up really quick. I mean, for you to survive, you have to grow up very, very quick. I mean,
right. I
left my mother's house, my grandmother's house, really, when I was 12 on my own on a train. So I went to the country to where my father, we didn't have telephones. My father certainly doesn't even have a telephone now. So I just showed up at his house. Just like, hey, my mom died, so I have to live here now.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a long trip too. It's probably 18 hours on a turn of the century train.
Wow. That's it puts you in training for doing these art shows, getting on the road, driving.
Very similar.
Yeah. You're a boy, you're 12 years old, you go to your father's. What's he farming?
He farms just stuff you can eat, fruits, vegetables, and he had some cows, but he got rid of them because in Cuba you can get into a lot of trouble if you kill a cow. If it dies, You're not allowed to eat red meat, or you're not allowed to kill cows or to sell cows. So he got out of that. But mostly he's just vegetables, fruits, that kind of stuff.
When you're trying to get over to the United States and you're with cousins, you have kind of a group of friends that are all kind of banded together that
When we actually made it, we built it. I had tried a few times, so I knew what we had to build. I was kind of like the leader build, because I've done it so many times, and 2 of my cousins were novice. They never built a boat. And in between trials, I had to go to school. I would walk from school to my house down on the river, and I would watch this boat builders and people that, fishermen, they sit there and tell stories on the daytime. They fish usually at night for some reason, and they do their nets and they tell stories. So I kept asking them questions. I was super young, and there's usually no young people around the river.
Okay.
And I would just hang out with them, listen to the stories, and they kind of know what I was like, so if your compass breaks, what do you do out there in the middle of the ocean? And they kept saying, they would tell me all this stuff, but they knew that I was fishing for information.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of, after trying a few times and getting lost in the ocean and all this stuff, I was like, this.
Yeah, tell me about. Slow down on that. Tell me about a failed attempt. I want to hear.
Oh, so a few times we were probably 5, 6, 7 miles, and we always left from the coast or the bay, the mouth of the bay. Like, we actually didn't go to the closest distance to Miami or to Key West. We actually left from farther down the island because there's less Coast Guard, and people, the Coast Guard doesn't imagine you're going to go from a farther point. They always guard the closest point. And how they do it, they actually cross. They have ships going across. So you time them. You have to time them. After a while, I realized it's like, we're not prepared to this. It's like, you have to time them when they cross, then you go across. Because it's also physical too. It's like they're actual ships guarding the coast. They're keeping people in Cuba. I mean, it's kind of like they're like prison guards, really. Because most of the population wants to leave. I mean, Cubans go to the Arctic. Like, they migrate to the Arctic.
Yeah.
To not be in Cuba.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, so the time that we made it, so I was 17, I just turned 17, and I couldn't get caught anymore because I was going to go to prison probably for a very long time. And when you build a boat in Cuba, or when you build something and you get caught by the Coast Guard, the police, which in Cuba is the same thing. Coast Guard, all of it is one. Yeah. It's the military. All the stuff that you got to build a boat or the raft or the whatever, they give you time on that, because all of that stuff was stolen or traded, or because we don't have Home Depots in Cuba. So where do you get this? Oh, this guy gave it to me. And where did he get it? And all of it's stolen from the state, because everything belongs to the state. Yeah. So that time that we built a boat that succeeded, we actually built it like an actual boat. The rest of them were more like rafts. So this one, we actually built it on the river. Like, I got the steel skeleton. I know how to weld in Cuba. I worked in my sister's father's body shop. So I built this rib cage for the boat, and we built a whole boat, kind of like you build a real boat. So we will work on it at night and then fill it up with blocks and sink it in the daytime, because we built it on a bank of a river. It took us 4 or 5 months. I mean, trading or stealing or finding out, the parts. Like, you can't get screws in Cuba. So you have to figure out where to get screws or nails or anyway. So we will
taking them off of other things, just kind of robbing other things.
Exactly. Like
taking
stop
those
signs.
things apart.
Stop signs are really, really good. Well, there's none left, but they have really good bolts.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, something in America you appreciate, but stop signs have really nice bolts.
Wow. I'll keep that in mind. I'll
if
never have to, right?
A nice long bolt, stop signs. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So you're sinking this thing in the river, and I mean, how long does that take to build this boat up?
It took us a few months, because sometimes we couldn't pull it out. We actually had to jump down there and take all the blocks out, and then sometimes it floated, sometimes, and we had to tie it because we didn't want the current. And this is a very slow river, and this is kind of like a finger in the river where they grow rice. But we couldn't have anybody see it, because in Cuba, half of the population is watching the other half. So anybody that saw that boat, and also when we're finishing the boat, we need a paint, and the only paint, my cousin worked in a warehouse, a state warehouse, that store paints and stuff to paint, like the tankers, the oil tankers, maintenance stuff, right? And the only thing he could find was this bucket of oil-based Rust-Oleum. Have you seen the Soviet ships with that red stripe, like that red, super thick, strange paint that looks like it's melted down lead with a little bit of red ink?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? It's like that super thick. So we painted up our boat that color and that, which was terrible. That's all we could get. We couldn't get any other paint. So, and
just to seal it.
To seal it, that was for everything. I mean, we didn't have anything else. So we caulked it with this little, like, I don't know how you guys call this in English, but you put it in between the boards, you hammer it in, and then you put this putty on it, and it swells.
Right.
Anyway, that's how we do it.
Is this a sailboat or both rowboat or how? What kind of ship?
It was a sailboat. I designed it as a sailboat. This was going to be the time that I was going to make it because I was going to go to prison probably if I got caught. So there was, so I told my cousins, this has to make it. We either die or we're going to make it to America. And they were a little freaked out, but they had never tried. So we prepared everything. We're ready to go. So I went to one of my cousin's house, which it was where my grandmother lived before, and you can see the whole city. You can see the bay, beautiful bay. And my cousin had this binoculars, which is kind of rare. He probably stole them somewhere. But binoculars, we would watch the boats. And I was watching this little boat going out of the river, like this tiny little boat. It's like, wow, that's how we're going to look, like this boat. And there were like 3 guys rowing, and we were looking. It's like, that boat looks a lot like our boat. And it kept getting closer and closer. It was our freaking boat.
No way.
Yeah. So one of my cousins.
Who was in your boat? Was it loose or, somebody's in your boat?
3 guys rowing in this boat. So my cousin and I got on our bikes. We were not ready because we had to get provisions. We hadn't finished the sail. We actually, we finished all the woodwork and all the ropes, but we couldn't get fabric. We don't have canvas.
Sure.
And so anyways, we were trying to figure that out. So we got on our bikes and rolled down this giant hill, and we went to this place where we were going to meet to leave. And my cousin and I got there. It took us probably 45 minutes to get there. And my older cousin, he was a bodybuilder, his bodybuilding friend and his cousin, another cousin, were actually taking the boat without me. They're going to steal that damn boat. Oh my God.
You guys were pissed.
We were so pissed. But we were a little terrified of my mean cousin because he's like...
I bet. He's huge.
He's huge and Anyway, so he was a bastard. But anyway, so we had to do all that night. So we went and got the water, and we had canned food, like Soviet ration food. That's what we had, and jugs of water. And we left that night without a sail. We started rowing in the bay, going out of the bay, and I heard crying. It's like, there's somebody crying. There was a woman and a baby in the bow of the boat hiding. So my cousin had a connection in Miami, and this was his wife and his baby. So in our boat, without us knowing, there was a baby.
Wow.
Anyway, so it was terrible. So we started rowing, and we went out of the bay.
But you kept her with you, right?
Oh, no, there was no going back. Once you leave, you can go back because the timing of the grifos are called. So there are 2 ships that go across the bay. They cross each other to watch for rafters and for people trying to leave. Because our bay is a fortress base, like Havana Bay. There's 2 fortresses, one on either side. From the Spanish days, they were like castles.
Yeah, and they're still using those.
Yeah, they're bases, like military bases, and they crisscross the bay, make sure nobody leaves, or I don't know, Americans coming in, whatever. We've been waiting for the Americans to invade for 62 years. Preparing for it. Military prepares the people for it. It's like, come on,
of course,
they're never coming, and if they come, it will be great.
Finally, once you get past that certain kind of checkpoint, do you start to feel a little bit more at ease, or now you're headed towards open water?
We were heading towards open water, and I had a compass. That's one of the reasons why I was the leader of the thing, because I'd done it before, and I had a compass that I traded. Long story, but a compass. I know where north was, and if it got dark, compass. If not, but it started raining, pouring rain, and we couldn't see anything when we were out. And there was this giant swells. It was like climbing mountains on this rowboat. It was designed for 4 people. 3 were rowing all the time. So, but we had an extra person and the woman and the child. Anyway, so it was not designed for this, and there was no sail. So they didn't find the fabric. So they just didn't. They're tough guys. They're bodybuilders,
Yeah.
So they thought that we could do
muscle through it.
You can't muscle through it. It's not possible,
Yeah.
So anyway, so we were out there for 4 nights and 5 days. No, 5 nights and 4 days. out in the ocean. And I mean, it was incredible. It was like, when we didn't know, after like the second day, we didn't have that much water, we didn't have that much anything, but you start losing track of time and where you are, or which direction. And we probably were going in circles because the currents around Cuba are terrifying. The Strait of Florida, Cuba makes like an obstacle for the currents to go in the Gulf of Mexico. So they call that whole area the toilet bowl current, because it goes down the Atlantic, and it turns right in South Florida, right past the coral reef, right past Cuba. It gets really deep, and then the currents just go around the Gulf and come out. So it's like this current that goes around Cuba. There's terrifying, and it spits everything out into the middle of the Atlantic. But anyway,
so you're rowing against that.
Yeah, well, we not really. You can't row against us. We're being dragged by the current to the middle of the Atlantic.
Oh my God.
We're not doing a good job at going against it.
So where does this spit you out? I mean, where do you, I mean,
So
at what point do you start making?
We were out there and I had my compass. We kept going. The point of my boat was going north, but we were being dragged sideways. We're going to England, basically. England was going to be our destination. So we were just getting dragged. So we actually got picked up by the American Coast Guard 100 miles west of the Bahamas, which is pretty far from Florida. It's kind of strange, but we got picked up by American Coast Guard based in South Carolina, and I live here now. It's so strange. I never heard of South
That's
Carolina.
Amazing. Yeah. So they pick you up, and what happens at that point? What do they do with you guys?
Us up. This is the year. This is before Clinton made that law, wet foot, dry foot. It's a strange law. This is 1992. So that law was passed in 1994, which is a short history thing. So many people are leaving Cuba, like me, in rafts and getting killed and getting, drowning and stuff. So Castro stood up there and is like, okay, whoever wants to leave can leave. So 200,000 people start building boats and leaving. Like that day, they were leaving.
Yeah.
This is 1994. So there were so many people dying out in the ocean, and there were so many immigrants coming from Cuba in 94 that Clinton passed that law, wet foot, dry foot. So if you touch land, or if you're in American soil, you get to stay. But if you're in the middle of the ocean, they actually turn you around.
Oh my God.
They send you back, which means you're going to die.
Yeah.
Because you can't make it back. There's no making it back. So they pretty much killed them, really.
It's a death sentence.
It was. So this is why the Cubans in Miami are, the way they are. You know what I mean? They hate the government, and especially the Democrats, because they're the ones who, they just point at this guy. Clinton made that law. He killed all those Cubans.
Yeah. That's incredible.
It's
you
very
think
personal.
about the history of, like, I mean, our privilege of just not having to know that and be like, well, it's just a law. We think it's going fine. So you guys are picked up at 90. What you said, 90, 92? So we said.
Yeah, it was July 11th, 1992.
And they turned you guys around. Is that right?
No, this is before that law. Okay, gotcha. So we actually, when I got they would send American Coast Guards would go out to find Cuban rafters. And there's this group of Cuban volunteers that have airplanes that, Tito Puentes, Gloria Estefan would buy airplanes, like famous Cubans and rich Cubans would give money to buy these airplanes and give it to pilots. And there's a volunteer force of Cubans that leave Key West and Miami on planes looking for rafters. So we got picked up by the American Coast Guard because of this. So a plane saw us and called the Coast Guard, and then the Coast Guard comes and picks you up. That's how it works.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And then they took you back to Miami?
They took us back to Key West. So we were processed in Key West.
Key West. Mm-hmm. How does that process go once you're on soil and you're...
So before that law in 1994, Cubans were welcome.
Okay.
You only risk your life if you really have to leave that country, and a lot of political dissidents come this way because there's no other way to leave Cuba. When you hear, I left Cuba on a plane, you got to be very suspicious of that person because you don't get a passport and leave. There's no American Airlines. You don't go and buy a ticket and leave,
Right.
You either left by boat or left from the border, or you're like, state representative, whatever, or work for the Swiss embassy. I don't know how people leave on a plane,
But you guys get to Key West. You have a group of, your cousins. When you hit Key West, do you kind of scatter? Or do you stick together?
Oh, no. They separated us. I mean, also the way that we came, Cuba sends a lot of spies to America. The military drops them like in the ocean, the Cuban military, and they go on a raft, and a lot of spies come this way. Anyway, so you get processed, but you get like interrogated. I mean, we were there probably 4 or 5 days too in Key West. I was a minor, so I had this one with me the whole time translating. It was great. I was 17. I just turned 17. So we got processed there, and my cousin and I, we didn't have any family in America at all.
Yeah, no support system at all.
Nobody to send us to, So when they process, like they look, make sure you don't have strange tattoos. And my cousins probably had it much worse because one of them escaped the military. The one who tried to steal the boat escaped. He was AWOL too. So
wow.
He was and he had strange tattoos, and he was like super buff and dark and like military looking guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he stayed a little longer, but eventually they let us all go, and we went to Miami, and Catholic Charities put us up in a hotel, and then friends of actually the woman and the child that we brought, her husband, the father of the kid, came and gave us a ride through 8th Street, Calle Ocho. We call it Calle Ocho in Cuba, well, Miami too. Yeah. But anyway, so gave us a tour, and it was just eye-opening, but it's like, this is not as pretty as I thought. I thought Miami was more like California.
Yeah.
The movies.
Right.
And we went to a store, and they were kind of mean. It's like, this is very strange. And it was like very odd. So I didn't like the way it looked at all. Yeah. And I told my cousin, I'm not going to stay here. And they're like, what do you mean you got to stay here? This is like where the Cubans are.
Yeah.
And my other cousin was like, oh, I don't like it either. Fonseca, which he's here, and we're like brothers. One of my cousins was good. The other one was bad. So.
Right. The one that stole the boat, bad.
Bad. But they were so bad. Fonseca, which he lives in Naples now. And it was like, we want to go somewhere else. So we went to Catholic Charities and see if they wanted to help us get somewhere else, because we didn't have any family in Miami. When you have family in Miami, they just give you to their family. Like literally, they just let you go, and you go to your family, and we get a parol, we get a piece of paper that makes it so we can work. You can do stuff with this strange looking paper with no picture. It has no picture of you or anything. When Cubans come here with that piece of paper, exiles, that makes it so you're like a political exile. You're here one year and 1 day that you get residency. You're resident because of a law after the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's called the Cuban Adjustment Act. Mm-hmm. The bottom of the story is like, you get nuclear missiles, you get to be legal. That is a joke. It's an inside joke.
Right.
Anyway, so
so you're 17 and you're there, and where do you want to go?
I had no idea. Never. So we don't have maps of America and Cuba. We don't have American stuff. We don't have American TV. We don't have anything. And I knew that this place was really big. So I said, can I see a map? And they showed me this beautiful map. I was like, we've been sending Cubans to Vegas because there's a lot of work, hotels and this and that. Like, but that looks like the middle of the desert. There's no ocean there. I'm like, but there's work. It's like, I like to work, but let's see. So then I looked at it. It's like, how about on this side? I wanted to be as far as I could from Miami, I guess. How about this side? It's like, oh, California. It's like, yes, like the movies. And
exactly.
And is there an island? Like, I wanted to go back to an island that was, because I'm an island person. I love living in an island. America seems so big. And they're like, yes, Hawaii. And they like told me it's right here. It's like, man, that's really far. So my idea was, within minutes, I already had the plan. Go to San Francisco, work a little bit, and get on a boat, one of those boats that sailboats or whatever, that you can work on the boat and get to that place, without paying. Yeah. Or a container ship, whatever,
Sure.
Whatever you can, and go to Hawaii. Long story short, they gave us a bus ticket to San Francisco, and it took so damn long that all my ideas went out of the window, because it took us, I don't know how many days it took from and imagine coming from Cuba, how big this place must have felt, So from Miami from Miami to San Francisco was a long ride. So landing in San Francisco,
did it take you it must have taken you a week.
It took a while. I mean, the bus, we changed buses like twice, I think. But the bus kept going. It's like, it doesn't stop like us. Like, we go to sleep, they don't go to sleep.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They changed drivers or something.
Yeah.
But I think it was like 3 days, though. At least 3 days. I don't remember. It was 30 years ago.
That's a long time for a kid,
It was cool. I loved it. But I thought I was, so when we were like in Texas, Oklahoma, whatever we were, it's like, we must be very close. I wonder if we can walk from here or, do something else. But it's bus. The driver was so sweet. They were like, no. And the driver was Puerto Rican. Usually they spoke Spanish. it was, when you do that route, I get San Francisco to Miami, you speak Spanish.
You have to, right? Sure. So you get to San Francisco and your plans are out the window and you're adapting. And
so I get to San Francisco.
Where do you roll next?
So the bus doors open in Tenderloin. I stepped out and we had a little piece of paper with an address, 305 80th Street. It was like this building where Catholic Charities had helped other Cubans settle. It's a really rough neighborhood in San Francisco. It still kind of is.
Okay.
But anyway, so we got there and my roommates were like 8 or 9 or 10 Jehovah's Witnesses. So my cousin had other roommates. So that's where we started.
Yeah. They try to bring you along, show you the Jehovah's way.
Yeah, but they were Cuban Jehovah's Witnesses. It's a whole different.
Okay.
In Cuba, they go to prison for being Jehovah's Witnesses, so they're really nice. You know what I mean? They didn't try to convert you or anything. And they were older guys, and I was probably the age of all of their kids. They were super sweet, really smart, and they have been all of them have been in prison in Cuba for many, many years.
Yeah, it's not our proselytizing Jehovah's.
They're not that kind. No.
Yeah. So you kind of got into a good group there, and you're in San Francisco, and I like hearing your stories. I mean, where are you working? You work as a welder?
No. I went to English school for a while, in very close in Tenderloin, like City College, but everybody spoke Russian or Spanish, and there was no English to be learned there. So I asked my teachers, can I transfer somewhere? Because I'm not going to learn English here. Because in Cuba, you don't speak English. It's illegal, actually, too.
Oh, is it illegal?
Yeah, it's illegal. When I grew up in Cuba. Now, I guess some people speak English, but it was illegal. You can't even say okay in Cuba. It's the only place that you can say okay. You say oka. Not funny?
Amazing.
Oka.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but oka. But anyway, so I went to school for a while, and then I transferred to Chinatown, which everybody spoke Mandarin, Cantonese, whatever, and English. I learned English there in Chinatown, San Francisco. I'm walking
Chinatown.
Walking back and forth. I saw a sign that said for hire. It was a Chinese restaurant, and I walked down there. The guy looked at me. Mexican? No. Speak Mandarin? No. Chinese? No. Good, hire. Because they didn't want anybody, and it was a dishwashing job. So I had that job for a little bit. It was great. And then I get to hang out with the Chinese people of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's how you start to learn English through the Chinese.
Yeah, because you had to speak English. I wasn't going to learn Mandarin or Cantonese.
No way.
I tried for a while. It's really hard.
I bet.
But anyway, so I kept meeting people that way, and I walked everywhere. So I met more and more people. So then I moved out of there. I got a job because I could fix things, and I grew up in Cuba, and so this Puerto Rican lady got me a job at this house called Guerrero House, which is a house for youth at risk. I could stay there for free if I could fix all the stuff. It was this giant mansion where youth at risk and like ex-drug addicts, like a halfway house, I guess.
Okay.
But and I'd stay there. They let me live there. I lived there for like a year. And I would fix the toilet, fix the roof, fix whatever. And through that place, I met this guy that owned a place called Ground Zero. So it was a similar to this place where there's kids to live, but again, youth at risk from 18 to 21. That he set up a place for them to like learn how to weld, fix bicycles, sew screening. I eventually opened like a used clothing store. So Jake gave me a job there teaching this youth at risk. The funny part is like most of them were older than me or my age. Yeah. I was like a staff, but
But you knew more than they did.
I was their age. And then we built this climbing wall for them to. The idea was that if they were hanging out at Ground Zero, which was this beautiful 2 huge warehouses in the Mission District, Jake was a wealthy doctor. He was a youth at risk himself, and then he got out of it and he went to med school, became a doctor, and then
decided to start this
Exactly. Very cool. So the idea was that if the kids were there, the youth they were not out there getting drugs and doing stuff. So it was kind of like a hangout. Yeah. The cool place, like their favorite part. But he hired me to help him build like a dark room because he needed somebody young, and he wanted me to build it with kids that were there. And the kids.
This is for the silk screening part of the business.
Silk screening thing that he did. There was actually photography developing to take photographs. Like a dark room.
Sure, of course.
So I just building stuff, and also the kids would trust me because I was their age and I was an immigrant. And you know what I mean? Somehow I had a good rapport with people my age because they wouldn't talk to a lot of older people.
Well, you hadn't exactly had an easy background either. I mean, it's not.
They trusted me, and
it's not the drugs in the streets, but it's you've gone through your own struggles at that point, so that makes sense.
But anyway, so there, we bought like a few things for welding and stuff, and it was cool. It was very, very cool.
Wow.
And some of them actually love welding so much that they actually got out and like started like really welding, like trying to get a job welding, which was very cool.
That is great.
So we would leave the roll-up door open, but people would walk in, but we had to have it open because of welding and noise and dust and stuff. So I built this amazing gate out of railroad spikes and donated chunks of bicycles. Yeah. So a gate that you can have it closed. It was beautiful, but the air would go through, you know what I mean? And it was very large. So this woman saw it, and she's like, "Oh, you should work for an artist." It's like, I gotta go to school. I gotta do this. I don't know if I can do this. Like, no, he'll pay you a lot more than you're getting paid. It's like, but anyway. So I met the sculptor. That's how I got into art. Because in Cuba, I didn't do any art.
That's worked your first art piece.
Yeah, that gate was the very first thing that I've ever made. Actually, I have that, and for some reason, I made a crucifix. I'm not religious because I guess
well, it's around you all the time too. I mean, it's kind of a natural.
Not in Cuba.
No?
No. We're not Catholic in Cuba either. We're communists, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The Catholics went to Miami a long time ago.
Yeah.
There's some, but anyway. So I guess that's something that I could make with the stuff that I had there. So I still have it in my studio. And anyway, so I met Cork Marquesky. He really liked me. And I started grinding and welding for him. Mostly grinding at the beginning. And then it's like, for you to be able to work for me, you need to get certified as a welder. It's like, I don't know. I don't have work here. I have to learn English because, I need to communicate with you so you pay me more.
Of course.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's like, I'll pay for you to go to school to learn how to weld for real. It's like, you don't like my welds? It's like, but I need a piece of paper because he was a sculptor. He did public art projects. Yeah. Anyway, so he helped me do that. And then I went to the San Francisco shipyard to learn how. That's the only place you can get certification in San Francisco.
Okay.
Through a union.
So you're down to the shipyard. I mean, is that part of they kind of put you through a training program?
Yeah, it's a training program, but when
mentorship?
It's a mentorship. It's like it's a union. I think it was called a Local 1 Iron Workers Union. You do it through that program, and they're just trying to produce sheet metal workers, fabricators, shipbuilders. So, but I got there and I really loved it because in Cuba I welded on cars. I could make a 57 Chevy into a 59 Impala, no problem. That we did that. In Cuba we would actually build cars almost from scratch. Like you give me 3 cars that don't run, and we would make you one.
Make you one.
Yeah, one that runs. It might have a Buick with a Lada. Lada is a Soviet car. Lada engine in it with a transmission from a tractor, Soviet tractor too. But it would run. It would be great.
Yeah,
and it would look okay too.
That's amazing.
That's the kind of welding that I did in Cuba.
Right.
But there I learned how to really weld, and I loved it. And I liked the people, and they treated me really nice. And I met a lot of like hardworking, like you would call rednecks. When they were working the ships, they're not called rednecks. They called them something else. I forgot what it was. Not roughneck.
Roughneck.
Kind of like roughnecks. It's something else. It's like shipbuilders. But anyway, so I loved it. I was like, I don't have to wash dish. Because, in San Francisco, when you're young, my age, you work in restaurants or you work in the service industry. It's like, I didn't do well in that restaurant. I think I was only there for like 2 or 3 weeks. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I didn't like to be inside like that. I mean,
no.
So I was like, okay, I'm going to go the blue collar route. I want to build things.
Yeah,
I want to
feel like there's 2 kinds of people. You get your construction people and you get your service industry kind of.
That's
Yeah, I mean those are the 2 paths really. That will get you.
But I'm so through Cork. So I would be grinding outside. I would weld all his sculptures. Be grinding outside. We actually did it on the sidewalk. I met these 2 guys, which is like they were my real mentors, the Joyce brothers. So Joyce brothers were these 2 guys that were down the street from Cork Studio. This is a studio in South of Market when there was a lot of artists in South of Market, in San Francisco South of Market. That's where all the artists were in the 90s till the computer people came. So Shipley Street was where the kind of industrial, the welders, the sculptors were there. So these fabricators, the Joyce brothers, were like literally like maybe a block or half a block down Shipley Street. And they would see me grinding there all day long. And they were like, they kept looking at me. I was like, where are these guys? And they have overalls. Like, these are like true rednecks. These guys are like, and once they came up, because we walked to this convenience store and buy 2 sandwiches every day, the same thing. It was very strange. Like, and they were always together. Joyce Brothers Metalworks. So they talk, like, do you need a job? It's like, no, I have a job and I have another job. It's like, no, like, like, do you want to be a fabricator? It's like, oh, I'm getting my welding certification, blah, 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 but I'm just working for Cork. And they used to build sculptures. They actually did some stuff for him still, fabricate like very elaborate stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe I can talk to Cork and maybe I can work for you guys like 1 day a week. Anyway, so that's kind of that part there. It kind of turned my life around because this guy did like the most amazing metalwork you will ever see. Welded bronze that look like, in the shows you see stuff as cast. And it's beautiful. Think about that, but fabricated, like beautiful. And they used to build sculptures for, dozens, if not hundreds of artists from the Bay Area in California. Like, so I went to work for them, and there is where I really learned how to weld, how to fabricate beautifully. Okay. I learned how to TIG weld. Like, I really got into it. So I started welding, like making my own bicycle frames, and like, I loved it. And then I started making my sculptures out of stainless steel, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, you're kind of developing your aesthetic there too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also looking at all this work. Cork's work was amazing. He was mostly aluminum glass and light, because his artwork was light. It was like illuminated, beautiful pieces. But the Joyce Brothers made art for everybody. I mean, incredible. I mean, people that I don't know. Famous people, and I was welding this stuff all the time. It's like, man, this is very cool. And that's really how, between Cork and them, is how I got introduced into art. Because in Cuba, it's like, for you to be an artist, you're the son of the general, the other guy, because the art school in Cuba is a way out. Like, an artist in Cuba can make, I don't know if you know anything about Cuban artists. Cuban artists, very popular. It's always been, and it's sponsored by the States. So they give you a solo show, and they realize that you can make a lot of money. So they put the power of the country behind you, and they give you a show in the Guggenheim. You know what I mean? And they train, they have incredible art schools to train you like the old ways. I was never exposed to art in Cuba at all.
No, not at all. I mean, I can imagine not where you grew up, really. It didn't really seem like a way out, probably.
No. I mean, even being a doctor or a lawyer in Cuba, it's not a way out. A way out is to leave.
Just to get the fuck out.
Yeah, way out is like to get in a boat.
Right, out is out.
Or become like actually, baseball players can leave either.
Oh, yeah.
When baseball players come to anywhere in the world, they have like 5 guards for each baseball player to guard them. Not guard them for their life, guard them so they won't stay.
So they won't stay. Yeah.
They won't stay in whatever. So like the National Ballet, this is a good example. I'm ranting on the side so you understand how bad it is. The National Ballet of Spain, Madrid National Ballet, is actually the National Ballet of Cuba. The whole ballet stayed in Madrid, all of them, including the handlers. Gosh. The handlers, they stayed too.
Yeah. That's incredible.
The handlers, they stayed too. Now they're managers.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a desperate way to grow up. It gives you kind of a drive, right?
And as long as you don't know, if the key with you is like, if you don't have ambition, you do well. You stay within your means and you stay. Or if you have family in Miami, I mean, all of Cuba is really supported by us here, because everything you have to buy from here and send it there. I mean, it's very sad. But anyways, you have this population of super ambitious people made to be communist. It's like, if you look at our history, we've never been this way. It's like, we're very ambitious people. You get any one of those Cubans from Cuba and put them anywhere in Manhattan, and they will do well. I mean, I'm talking about really well.
Absolutely.
Because we're not made to be communist. We're just not.
Not made to be controlled, told what to do. I mean, I guess that's how you found your way here. I always say that there's no way that I could ever work for anyone again after having done what we do for a living.
No, me neither. Me neither. I can't see. I mean, I worked for people before. And at the Joyce Brothers, where I started making sculptures, and the Joyce Brothers would give me the key of the shop. After work and on the weekends, I would build the sculptures, and I will practice my welding, my TIG welding, because I wanted to get better and better and better. Right. So anyway, people would show up at the shop to pick up their stuff. I was like, who made that? It's like, I made it. It's like, you can sell this. It's like, who's going to give me money for this stupid thing? Anyway, so after a while, I had dozens of these things. They were objects, very strange objects. And a lot of it had to do with whatever the hell I found, like drops, and I make them fit together. They were very cool. I sold all of them. And then I think the turning point was the Joyce Brothers got a job. And throughout all of this, I was into climbing. I love climbing. After building a wall, you had to like figure out the routes and stuff. So I went to a climbing gym to see how they did it. I like heights. I've always liked heights. So there was a job that the Joyce Brothers got through the big union to replace the Golden Gate Bridge's cable. You know, like the
support cable.
Yeah, support cable. Yeah. So they're like, "Do you want to help on this?" I was like, "Yeah."
Oh my God.
So this company came and took the whole kit, but we didn't take it down. There's people that do that.
Oh, okay. So you're not doing the install or the.
No.
Okay.
That they have a company that goes all over the world that does this. Our job was to like cut it up and get rid of it. It wasn't like replacing the company.
I was picturing you up there on the bridge, like replacing.
I was up there a lot because there were chunks that they didn't bring down. So anyway, so what made my mind change? Like, shit, I could make things and sell them. So the Joyce Brothers gave me a job of cutting up this thing into chunks and put it in a dumpster.
Okay.
So I started cutting them with this giant abrasive saw. You tape it and then you cut it so it doesn't unravel.
Right.
And they're like 5, 6, 7 inches long. And I started making chunks of it. I was like, I went to the welding shop and I welded the whole top of one with stainless steel.
Yeah.
And welded it out. I polished it. I was like, this would make a really nice counterweight.
Yeah.
Like you put it on your desk. And it's from the Golden Gate Bridge. So I made 500 of those, and I could have sold 5,000 of those. So everybody wanted this thing. It's like, shit, this is very cool.
It's like buying a little piece of the bridge. It's buying a piece of your favorite stadium or something. It's like
I wish I had made thousands of them, but it was just fun. It was hard to weld though because they unravel. So anyway, but it changes. It made my mind. It's like, I could make things and sell them.
Yeah.
So anyway, so
that's how you found your way. I mean, that's how you get your mindset. Probably like any of our stories, really, you get it's like a ball rolling down a hill once you start in.
Yeah. No, I got a great break. Cork was having a show and Southern Street Art Gallery is like, you should bring one of your things. He called them things. One of your objects to the show and see what people say. So I went to a show, brought the stuff. People didn't like it at all. I mean, they didn't buy his shirt either. So, and I was walking down Sutter Street and there was a street festival like ours.
Yeah.
An art show. And then I saw this guy with bronze pieces and I sat there with him and I introduced myself. I'm an artist too. I make things for other artists, but I make this and that. And the guy was super, super, super nice. Like, a slow show. It's one of those shows that, we all started on those shows kind of thing.
Of course.
And I was like, do you sell things here? He's like, oh yeah, I've sold 2. I was like, wow. And how much are they? No, I have a heavy accent now, but I was, young and like, I was super nice. And he was so nice to me. He was like, oh yeah. So it's like, can I come and help you on Sunday? It's like, why? It's like, I want to see this whole thing. Anyway, so that I helped him. By Sunday, he had sold 5 pieces. To me, that was magical because my boss, Cork, would sell 2 sculptures per year. They were big and expensive, but like, I was like, wow. So that kind of made my mind kind of open. Like, I can make things at the shop and figure out how to sell them myself without the gallery. Because this gallery thing, to me, was a little bit like, But anyway, so it kind of opened my mind. It's like, this is cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did he kind of just help you out that weekend a little bit, or did you kind of stay in contact with him?
I didn't stay in contact with him at all. There was no cell phone. I think I kept his card for years. Yeah, right. Jim was his name.
Yeah, and that kind of got you rolling as far as the next phase. It sparked something in my mind. Like, and he didn't have a tent either. He was like, one of those open, but there were tents, and I did walk around and looked at stuff. It's like, so this is, and he felt very free. Like, America. When I think about America, you make whatever and you sell it. That's it. There's no middleman. Exactly.
So you know what I mean. Like, if you're good, you do well. If you're not, you're probably starved to death.
Exactly. And then you mentioned the gallery thing, like not really wanting to give your cut to them either. It's not.
I wouldn't have mine, but they didn't sell anything.
Right.
I was like, but anyway, so little by little, so I started like doing my own fabrication, own sculptures. I would sell to people that we knew and stuff like that. But then I started climbing more and stuff like that. I started traveling around and I wanted more space. And then I got that itch that all of us Cubans get that very early. I went to buy my own house because I've been renting for, probably 3 or 4 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
So I wanted to buy a house and build a studio.
And you bought in San Francisco, is that right? You bought?
No. My house where I live sold for $4 million.
Oh my God.
And we had a bunch of roommates, but it was when I lived in San Francisco, between my house and my studio, I paid $9,000 a month rent.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah. And even then, too. I mean, this is you're in your 20s at this time, right?
Yeah, I was making really good money. I was fabricating for a lot of people, and but my whole crossover thing happened. I was building, so I met this. Cork had a very good friend. There was a glass blower in Seattle, and he's like, "Oh, I'm building a new studio, so maybe you can." And he loved, or everything he touched had to be handmade and beautiful.
Yeah.
So he hired me, but eventually he kept calling me, "Come and build my studio in Seattle." I was like, "Oh, I got so much work here, dude. Blah blah blah." So I'll go visit and see what it is. So he bought this beautiful old gas station in Capitol Hill.
Oh wow!
So he wanted me to build his furnaces. I never built a furnace in my life. I was a fabricator, but his furnaces, his glory holes, or his hand tools, his doors. He wanted me to build him a crane system that he could take his crucible out by himself, no help at all. Yeah. So I built him a little bridge system so you can take the top off, put it down, and I built him a claw to get the thing down there all by himself. I was building this thing for him for like 8 months. So going back and forth to my shop in San Francisco in my 1971 pickup truck from Seattle to San Francisco every other week.
That's incredible.
So I did it. And in that transition, our building where my shop was sold, and we had to move out. So literally I had to drive down to San Francisco one last time and bring all my stuff in this tiny pickup truck. So I went to Seattle, and the idea was I was going to finish this thing and have enough money so I could buy a house back in San Francisco.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I needed another shop because I couldn't do everything at his shop. So I was looking for storage for all of my stuff and be able to weld and stuff. So I was wandering in my neighborhood in Georgetown, and I saw this metal building, probably like 5,000 square foot metal building.
Huge, yeah.
And it was kind of terrible looking, right next to a True Value Hardware. and there was this guy smoking cigarettes outside. I was like, "Do you know whose building is that?" "Oh, this old guy is just full of salt." I was like, "What?" Yeah. He bought the salt. It snowed once, like in the 80s or 90s, whenever it was, and there was no salt. So he thought salt was going to be worth a lot of money. So this old guy filled up this building with salt all the way up to the ceiling.
Oh my God!
You open the roll-up door, there was salt, bags of salt.
That's incredible. Like salt, like spice, or like road salt.
Salt for the roads. Salt,
oh my gosh,
like bags of salt. And they're all like melted together. It was a mountain of salt inside that building. It was all the bags were broken, and Seattle, it probably had the building had a few leaks, so
of course.
Got wet. But anyway, so I walked around, and on the street, this is in the alley. On the street, it's called Ellis Street. There were two cool little houses, and one of them was kind of falling down sideways, like those shotgun houses,
right,
from 1900. So Georgetown, it's where Seattle was built from. Georgetown is much older than Seattle, so a lot of the mill people that built the city lived in Georgetown.
Right,
it was its own little city. Yeah, very much. But anyway, so I went around, and in the yard there was piles of garbage everywhere. There was a sign, so I jumped a little fence. I picked up the sign, and there was a number. It said for sale on it. So I called that number because I needed storage. What I wanted to do is rent that building so I can pull the salt out, put all my machines there, and rent it till so I could finish. Because my full-time job was building the glass shop, but I wanted to be able to do something on the side. And now I just had a bunch of junk that I didn't want to leave at my work site because it's not my building.
Right.
So I had a lot of sculptures, I had a lot of machinery and shit like that. So anyway, so I called this number, and this realtor is like, "Oh, no, it's for sale. It's not for rent." It's like, "Oh, I just want to rent the building behind, blah, blah. It's, I will pay whatever." It's like, I tried to sell that years ago. I'm not really representing the old guy. I'll give you his number. So this realtor gave me the old guy's number.
Yeah.
And this guy came that same day. He's like, "Oh, I don't know if I can rent this thing." He was this tall, skinny, smoking cigarette. Like he had a cigarette. He was smoking a cigarette. He had another one in his hand. The type.
Right, to light the other one.
Yeah, you have to light it. Yeah. Anyway, so he's like, and that's when he opened the roll-up door. It wasn't even locked. He opened the roll-up door. He's like, "Yeah, this is my life's investment," or something like this. Like, I was like, "I want to rent it, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "No, I ain't going to rent this to you, son. I'll sell it to you." I was like, "I can't buy this thing's like, no, I'll sell you the building with those 2 houses. One of them has to be torn down. The other one, there's a Puerto Rican renting it. I was like, no, I don't have money to buy a house right now. And I'm not from here. I live in San Francisco. And I told him the whole story. He's like, I was like, I can't go to a bank right now. I don't have like a real job, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, you know what? You don't even need a real job. If you give me a deposit, I'll carry the contract. This is all in the same afternoon.
Oh my God.
Like when I saw a sign, I called, because he lived like 4 blocks away.
Right. Well, he's probably had nobody looking at that place ever.
Oh no, that sign was like maybe 10 years old.
Yeah.
He was laying in the yard
He's
with all the
finally
garbage.
got somebody. Yeah. He's got you on the hook. He's not letting you go.
Yeah. But anyway, so he had a bunch of other houses like that rented in the neighborhood, like really slumlord houses, like barely hanging on, no foundation, But anyway, so I came from San Francisco. I didn't know anybody pretty much that knew anybody that owned the house.
Sure.
No one my age or no one that I hang out around. They don't own houses. Their parents rented in San Francisco. So I couldn't even, I wanted to buy a house, but I needed to have a giant pile of money, go back and, figure out in San Francisco or around. Back then we were looking also on the East Bay, like
totally.
East Bay, Oakland. But anyways, and a lot of our artist friends moved to Oakland because they couldn't. It was done. San Francisco was done. But anyway,
still that way, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's terrible. But anyway, so this old guy was like, if you give me a little bit of money, I'll carry the contract. It'll be cheaper than if I rented you this building. You give me 20% down, then I'll carry the contract for you. I was like, okay. How much? It's like
of what? Yeah.
Yeah, $150. I was like, so I'll give you $150,000. And you carry that contract for me. And I had like $100,000 in the bank or more.
Yeah.
Because, I was used to pay $9,000 rent, So, and I was going to call this lawyer to do all the stuff. Like, I'll get my lawyer to do the stuff. Like, you don't need a lawyer. Like, yeah, we're going to use this lawyer. Say, But anyway, so, and he's like, boy, you're not understanding. It's like, yeah. Okay, again, I'll give you $150,000 and then you'll carry the contract. Like, boy, the whole property is $150,000. And I was like, because I come from San Francisco, where 100,
that's not going to buy you a toilet. Yeah, that's nothing.
$150,000 is not even. Yeah, you got to come up with $500,000 to put down.
Right.
And we did all the paperwork right outside of the roll-up with salt, literally right there with his lawyer. And it was like he carried the contract. I started taking the salt out, and the salt I gave it to the True Value Hardware. They actually wanted it. I was like, why?
Do they
and
really?
They put it on a they wanted it. It's like, and then that same year, within like months, I think I bought that in December. In January, it was the worst snow that Seattle had in years.
Oh my God.
So they used all that salt for the driveway, and they gave me some of it back too.
Did you buy it?
Couldn't go. No, they gave it to me because I gave it to them.
Yeah.
And I would make really good friends. I would borrow their forklift to move up my welding tables. These people were so unbelievable. And it was incredible. They were really incredible neighbors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that neighborhood was so great for me. And also, I learned how to work in a house because this house, one of them had been condemned for 50 years. Ooh. Condemned. No power, no water.
Yeah.
So I started working these houses, taking all the vines. He had vines all over. I mean, it was
totally
terrible.
Overrun. Yeah.
Like 20, 40 years of people throwing garbage in the yard.
Insane.
But yeah, it was pretty insane. But I learned how to roof. I learned how to do plumbing. I didn't know. In San Francisco, people don't know how to do any of this stuff because they don't own anything.
Yeah.
There's barely a Home Depot in San Francisco. They don't.
Yeah. So you just, I mean, you learn by necessity and you kind of go with that.
And Home Depot was Home Depot was probably a mile away right next to where the original Starbucks is.
Oh, wow.
On 99. The original Starbucks is there and Home Depot is next door, very close to these houses. So I would go, and it's a 24-hour Home Depot. So I would go after work, and work in my houses to like 1 a.m. It's like, shit, I need some more 2x4. I would drive to Home Depot at 1 or 2 a.m. I love 24-hour Home Depot. I love it.
Oh my God.
That's cool.
That's perfect, especially for you and what you come from, I mean, it's no more stealing bolts out of stop signs.
You can go buy stuff and you can buy as many as you want. It's like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, and plus that neighborhood too is, I mean, talk about getting in kind of the ground floor of something too.
When I moved there, Georgetown is incredible.
Yeah.
So I only lived there 2 years. When I moved there, there was me I bought this house, and then Marvin, this lawyer, and his wife bought this other house. The rest were rentals, like pretty rundown rentals.
Yeah.
And little by little, every single house. When I left, there was no more rentals. People bought every single house on Ellis Avenue. It's a pretty cool neighborhood. But anyway, so that was my start. Like that was my
first. A hell of a start.
My first houses, yeah.
I've talked to you. I love your story, and it's so much more interesting to hear kind of your story than just the typical talk about art shows. Sometimes that gets boring. I'd rather just talk about history.
And I love listening to people's stories on the shows. But
I want to get into a different one. Dig a little bit deeper. It's fascinating to talk to you. It's fascinating to hear you talk. And
thank you, brother.
Where you come from and where you're going. I love to, like, we've gotten Patricia's story, and you met her. When did you meet Patricia? I mean, I kind of know from her story.
So I met Patricia exactly 2 years after I moved to Seattle, almost 2 years after I moved to Seattle. So I finished those two houses, and then my project ended, of course, to building the glass shop. So I was like, shit, I got a house. The thing about fabricating and making sculptures and stuff for other people is that you have to have a lot of connections. Yeah. And in San Francisco, I had all of that. But in Seattle, I did not have all of that.
No.
So I had to like hit the ground running, and I was like, shit, I got to make stuff. And I had some sculptures. So I made more. I was like, how do I sell this? So there was a garden show in Seattle. Like people love their gardens in Seattle. So I was part of the garden show because I made outdoor sculptures. So I sold like 2 or 3 pieces. I was like, wow. And I started digging more. And then actually to my garden show, this women came and like, oh, we run a show called Best of the Northwest. I was like, what is that? Like, you heard of it?
I know that one.
Yeah, all right. So anyway, so I went to their show. They were super nice. I sold quite a bit. And then I was like, I could do this for a living. So I bought a nice pickup truck, because before I had like, that same
71 pickup,
1971. Yeah, like the tiny little Toyotas, the little blue one.
Right.
I love that truck. Yeah, the clutch was out. No clutch, really.
Oh, man.
So I went back and forth to San Francisco from Seattle like every other week. So anyway,
I've learned how to shift without a clutch. I've been through that. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're parked, you have to park downhill or uphill. I mean, it's not a big deal. You push a little bit, it works fine too. Yeah. But anyway, so I just really liked it. I liked to like go there, you set up this thing, and they bring the people, and you sell to them. It's like, if you're good, you sell. If you're not, Anyway, so I love that, and I love how honest all of it was, and how anonymous. It didn't matter if you were famous or not. I love that part about it. You don't have to be somebody's kid, or you don't have to be known.
It's an equalizer, right?
So I loved it. So at that show, I met another sculptor. His name is Dan Klenner, and he still does huge sculptures. He has a sculpture park on the foot of Mount Rainier, and his sculpture park is called the Spirit of Iron.
Okay,
unbelievable. Was the most beautiful. He makes the most beautiful sculptures I've ever seen. Awesome. Fabricated from objects, but you could swear that 40, 50-foot giraffe was born that way, and she's made out of horseshoes.
Yeah, amazing.
With a Singer sewing machine for a heart in there. You could swear this thing was born this way.
That's incredible.
I went to see him, and he's like, hey, I have this show. You want to come and see this show? It was the Bellevue show. But he didn't do the one inside. He didn't do the Bellevue one, the museum one. He did the one outside. It's called The Rest of the Best. Because the Bellevue Show Museum, they used to say that they're like the best show, blah, blah, blah. So this group of artists got together and rented the parking lot of the Pier 1 Import and did their own show across the street called The Rest of the Best. I love that name. So, and then I was like, I'm not going to do the show anymore. So you should take my space for next year. I'm like, shit, beautiful, great, So, but before that, I had another show at the Seattle Space Needle. So another one of those indoor shows. It's on the bottom of the Space Needle in the convention center.
Yeah.
So I went there, and there was a lot of crafters that we see in the circuit now, clothing, and there was me with my sculptures were very heavy. I had to have a mini forklift. They were 800 pounds, 300 pounds.
Yeah.
They were pretty big. And back then I was making mostly creatures, like dinosaurs,
okay,
like velociraptors, like weird creatures and fish and crazy stuff, So anyway, a lot of work to get this thing down this ramp all the way, and this marble floor.
Oh my God.
Was just, it was insane.
You're working harder, not smarter at that point.
Oh yeah. And there were like 400 vendors. So 400 artists in there, and it was like maybe 15 people per day came. It was terrible. Brutal. So this gay man came to me and was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I read you're Cuban. It's like, oh yeah, I'm Cuban. Like, oh, I thought he was flirting with me. I was like, I'm from San Francisco, so I know when he's not really flirting with me. He's selling me something.
Okay.
And he made this puppets, very beautiful puppets.
Yes.
Anyway, so it's like, I have a friend that is also Cuban. It's like, boy or girl? Like, girl. And she's blah, 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 blah. You know, she's coming tomorrow. I was like, oh, sure, whatever. Sure. I mean, great. So I was, next day came, there was no one there. This show was one of the worst shows I've ever had. There was no one there. And there was this beautiful woman with another man with a giant cowboy hat. I was like, wow. And I was really into Betty Page. Yeah. My redneck friends got me into Betty Page, all like right. The pin-up stuff. So my shop was full of Betty Page's pictures.
I went through my rockabilly phase. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, so she had this girl had this sharp, like, cut way back bang. So it's like, oh my God, it's Betty Page bite size. And she came up to my booth. I started talking to her, blah, 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 blah. And she read, I had a little bit of a bio, and she signed my book. She put her name on my book. It was great. Well, we talked a little bit. And I was like, wow, very cool.
Yeah.
And she left. I was like, oh, very beautiful woman. Hours and hours and hours and hours went by. I was like, no one there. Matthew came by with her. I was like, oh, this is my friend. I was like, oh, I already met her. Like, oh, you're Cuban? It's like, yeah. We started talking, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I was really into her. She wasn't into me that much.
It takes time, right?
I was super skinny and like burnt hands, like wild shaved head,
Yeah.
Like I look like a juvenile delinquent still, And that's where we met. But I went to my book like a few days later. I was like, shit, she didn't give a phone number or anything. I had nothing. So like, how am I gonna find this beautiful girl? Like,
go find cowboy hat guy. Got to find him again. Track him down.
I know. It was like, so eventually she called me. She called me. Nice. You called me like a month later, maybe.
So she did like you.
She liked me. It took a long time,
right? She can't just jump on right away. She can't call you immediately.
I think her friend Matthew had a lot to do with it. He pushed her.
Okay.
And she used to work in this gallery in Pioneer Square. So she said, oh, there's this Cuban artist, very famous Cuban artist, having a show. So if you want, you and your girlfriend you can come and we can go see this Cuban artist. And I was like, sure. I don't have a girlfriend anymore, but sure, I'll come. So I showed up. I had a giant F-350 dualies, giant truck.
Yeah, no more 71 Toyota.
No, I had a big truck, and I parked diesel too because I had a trailer. So it was nowhere to park. So in Seattle, you just leave it everywhere because it's just nowhere.
Okay.
Pioneer Square was so tight. So I left this giant truck, and I had a Mastiff, a Neapolitan Mastiff dog. So we leave the windows rolled down. Nobody would get near the thing. But anyway, so I went to pick her up at her thing, and we met, and she's like, oh, let's go have a drink before the show. I was like, oh, great. She took me to her favorite little bar near her gallery. And it's like, what do you want? It's like, oh, I don't drink. And she's like, what? No, I don't drink alcohol. Huh. She had a few
what
drinks.
What am I going to do with this?
Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't eat meat either. I didn't drink coffee. No fun at all. So that's where we met. And then we were actually with each other all the time. And she lived in a house with a friend. And 6 months later, I told her, hey, you want to move in? I mean, you're here every night.
Yeah.
Might as well, you're going to be paying rent. So anyway, she moved in with me in my studio. I mean, I built a cool loft in the studio.
Yeah.
And we lived there like 6 months, I think. But anyway, so I looked at property to buy and eventually I bought a property in Whidbey Island, the San Juan Islands. So I rented all 3 houses, the 2 houses and the shop with a thing.
Okay.
And I bought land down up in Whidbey.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Man, you've made some good choices. That's incredible. I mean, not just the property, but the lady and the
lady.
Yeah. That's those are the important
and we
ones.
got married in Whidbey, actually. Yeah, we got married up in the island. Yeah.
Wow. Hey, I wanted, the first time I met you, I was at some show, I think maybe Northern Virginia. I can't remember exactly where it was, but I thought I was hot shit and just trying to figure it out. My ex and I had this body of work, and we were, we had all this stuff, had this business idea, where it's like, okay, here's this little stuff, here's this medium, and here's the big stuff. And I've said this on the podcast, I've quoted you on this before, but I'm like, I met you. And again, I think I'm hot shit. I walk over and I'm like, look, you're asking me about my business. And I said, well, this is my bread and butter. This is my stuff. And you go, I don't sell bread and butter. I only sell ham.
So.
And I walked over to your booth and you had all these, you were doing paintings at the time. And I had these giant paintings and, with great big price tags on them. I'm like, God, I want to sell ham. So if you go in my booth now, you'll see it's only filled with ham.
All ham.
Only ham. So thank you for that.
Ham. Anytime. Ham. I love that. No, ham is a big deal in Cuba.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Ham is like good. Ham is good food.
Right.
It's not just rice and beans. You have ham.
Exactly. So yeah, I'm only selling ham.
That's beautiful.
Man, this has been a great talk. I appreciate it. We could have gone a couple of different directions, but I'm glad we took this one.
Wow.
And
no, thank you, brother. Thank you.
Man.
I'm getting used to the ear things now, so I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready to go.
That's right. They'll be all hot and squishy by the time you take them off. Hey, you got a new body of work coming up. I saw a little teaser of that. I mean, it's definitely fits in with your other stuff, but
so recently I've been having this, not dreams, like memories. So when I was little in Cuba, we used to have kite fights.
Yeah,
you guys don't have that in America. So all of our house, so my city is built on the side of a mountain overlooking the bay. It's like a stadium,
right?
Beautiful. You think about your house like stadium sitting kind of round and on a bowl, and they're so all the roofs are concrete, cement. All the houses are cement. So we actually would fly kites from the roofs, and the people behind you. So and we all aiming to the bay. So we have this kite fights. They're actually not like competition because you actually cut each other's kites off.
Oh, okay.
And it's like a war.
Yeah.
So and you make your own kite with your family name or your gang name or whatever.
Yeah.
So my cousins and I and my neighbors, my immediate neighbors, which are kind of like my little crew, we make our kites and fly them and have wars against kids from another neighborhood. So you can fly the kite from your neighborhood to the next neighborhood over.
Yeah.
That's how far. And you learn how. So I don't know why I wanted to make paintings that felt that way. And I struggle with my lines because I work directly on Baltic birch. So, and it didn't give me that feeling of like quilty. Yeah, right. So I was throwing away all of this. I painted my house. I was throwing away all this drop cloth, like the tarps. I was like, that looks like the stuff that we would make kites of if it was paper. So, and I was going to throw away. It's like, I'm not going to throw away. So I cut them up and I started bending them and they looked like kind of like rough kites. So I grabbed them, took them to the studio and put them on top of panels and drew holes through them and rivet them to the panels. And I started painting on them. It's like, and somehow they become like kites.
Yeah,
like
that's the feel.
You get a bunch of kites. Yeah. So anyway, so I'm having a lot of fun with that. I don't even know if it's gonna sell, and I don't care.
It'll sell. It's coming from your heart. You know it will.
They have incredible texture. I mean, they have so many layers, and I love it.
I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Well, brother, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Man, this is a really good talk, and I'm really excited to share it with folks. So, man,
thank you, brother. And I edit it well because I'm a ranter. My wife was like, "Don't rant. I'm an old Cuban guy.
That's what I needed. That's what I needed. Yeah, I haven't done an interview in a few weeks, and it's been. I was like, man, I need to talk to Ray. I'm just gonna get him. Just push him down the hill, let him roll up, pick up speed.
That's good. Thank you.
Get back on the wagon.
It doesn't take much. I had a lot of coffee. I worked out. I had a lot of coffee, so I'm like, I'm ready. But it's like, don't you want to like have a shot of whiskey or something? Like, no, I'm ready to go. She's like, this is gonna be a crazy one.
Perfect. That's what I needed. All right, give my love, Patricia. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you, brother. Thank you, appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Well, Douglas, we're on the way out of that talk. Did you learn a couple things about Ray?
Oh my God. Ironically, his experience of trying to escape Cuba mirrors my attempt at leaving the state of Iowa so many years ago.
Does it really?
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
National
Guard is on the Mississippi.
Who's more desperate to leave? Liberal Iowans or Cubans?
It's a pretty good point you have there. It's a pretty good point.
Political and repression and all this. I don't mean to make light, but
no, I kid. I can't even believe as a 17-year-old guy that he hops in a boat and sets sail on the ocean.
Several boats. Builds several
boats, several rafts, several attempts, and it's like sets sail on the ocean. And when he told the part about it, the current was taking him to England. I'm like, how terrifying! Yeah. Not even knowing how you're going to get to where you're going. I mean,
and you don't have to.
That's such
honestly, we have the privilege of not having to think about the we don't have to think about laws set in place or proclamations set in place by different politicians that affect different people's lives. So it does definitely makes the scales fall away from the eyes and see another person's side of the story or see another person's journey.
Again, with the privilege. I mean, I feel like a lot of our stories that we hear from our peers out there, it's all about like opening our eyes to just a different experience. And his experience seemed, I mean, he's such a gregarious, happy-go-lucky kind of guy, but escaping.
Well, he's a no bullshit guy.
He's what?
I don't know if he's happy-go-lucky. He's definitely a no bullshit. It's like what you see is what you get.
Okay. Yeah, but
I mean, he's just, it's all right there. And I do love that about him and Patricia too.
Right.
It's just like, they're the opposite of the chucklehead out
Sure.
there. There's not a lot of laughing if nothing's funny.
Right.
They're just
I did not mean that, but I just meant in his stories. It's like to talk about these stories in such a way that are upbeat and then this happened and then this happened. Like, wait a minute. I mean, you had to say a couple times, slow down here. I want to hear more about this part of it.
Dig a little deeper. Hang on. Let me hear a little more on that. I have never built a boat. So let's talk about that.
And now that I know that he knows how to build glass blowing equipment, man, he's
incredible, right?
Gonna be calling him up. I need some help with that.
I know. I felt like I needed a tag team out there. I knew you were nerding out on the glass blowing furnaces and things. I was like, oh my God, Douglas is dying right now. He wants to ask. I'm sure there were 100 questions you wanted to ask him on that.
Well, I'm doing it all myself. So at that, really, the point was I want to hire somebody to come do it for me. But Ray's got I was joking. I'm not going to hire Ray to come fix my glass blowing studio. In fact,
you can't afford it.
I can't afford him.
You can't afford it.
I just dropped $5,000 on all new castings for our furnace. So when we shut down here during my surgery, I'll have a complete furnace rebuild to look forward to. That is going to be intense.
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome, because I will be happy that we're not losing heat out of this thing, but not awesome the physical challenge it's going to be to put it all together. But that's a story for another time.
Hire someone.
I'm trying. That's the plan. But you can't just like open a book and I used to make the joke, look through the yellow pages. No one has yellow pages anymore. Well, I can't
Thanks,
Google
Grandpa.
glass blowing repair person. Nobody shows up to do that stuff. So
Okay. Well, the word is out. You just announced it to the entire community. If you are a glass building, glass builder.
All right.
What the hell? I don't know what you do.
Yeah, right.
All right. Let's leave it on that note, folks. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. We have some exciting things planned for you. I've got some talks I don't want to jinx just yet, but some more talks coming down the pike.
Sounds good.
Thanks again for tuning in. Good luck on your cannonball run out there. Don't try to outrun the cops, but if you do, I don't know. I can't give you any advice there.
Sorry, just get there.
All right, go call the lawyer again, Douglas.
All right, take care, everyone.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigwithglass.com.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and be notified when we release new episodes.